Hello, readers. Welcome to The Right Kind of Book Talk. I'm your host, Stacey Wright. This is episode 12, Goodreads Choice Awards. Who won, and do I agree? So, I always do vote in the Goodreads Choice Awards. My influencer programs all nudge us to help their books that are nominated. Now, personally, I do pick the ones I feel should win, but it's a nice reminder to vote when they send us an email. I'm going to give you the lowdown on the categories, what some of the nominees were, and who won. But before we dive into whether or not I think the winners are worth the read, yep, you guessed it, it's publication day. So let's take a look at some of the books that you could pick up in the bookstore today. Let's start with A Crown, So Silver by Lyra Celine. And that one is a romantasy book. A Death in Diamonds by S.J. Bennett, and that one is a historical mystery. A Knight in Shining Armor by Jude Deveraux, and it's a romance with time travel. It looks really interesting. Artificial Agent by J.W. Jarvis, and that one is a techno thriller. Dancing Women by Elaine Neal Orr, and that one is a literary fiction. Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, and it is a romantasy. Man, I have been on tetherhooks waiting for this one. I am so excited to start, which I will be after this podcast finishes. God of Ruin by Rena Kent, and it is a suspenseful romance. Only After We Met by Alice Keller, and it is a new adult book. And The Unwanted Royal Wife by Claire Connolly, and it's a billionaire romance. Now, I don't read a lot of billionaire romance, but I actually did add this one to my TBR for the month. Okay, so I love the Goodreads Choice Awards. It's basically like a quick snapshot of the books that other readers thought were excellent for 2024, because that's the year we just did, in a variety of different genres. Now, this year they had 15 categories with 20 books as choices for us to pick in each. So what they do is they pick the top 20 books based on Goodreads users' reviews and the star ratings that they're given. Then each Goodreads user has the chance to vote for their choice in each category. You don't have to vote in each category. You can, but you don't have to. But then the top 10 books go through to the next round for final voting, and then you get to vote again. The one thing I didn't really dig is it does prioritize Goodreads authors when it picks their selections. So I kind of feel like the deck is a little stacked already, but any author become a Goodreads author. So I guess there is that loophole. Now, something I did notice is they had less categories this year than they have had in previous years. Like they used to have a children's and mid-grades category. They also used to have a graphic novel category, and there was no poetry this time. And in 2022, they actually had a humor category. Now, I'm wondering if maybe these categories didn't get enough votes on the books added, so they cut them. I don't know, but it was really something that I noticed, and it was quite interesting, and there was no explanation as to why. So before we dive into the 2024 winners, I was really curious if there was an author who had won more than once. And yep, Rick Riordan won it a total of 11 times. Now that is seriously impressive. Stephen King has won it 10 times. Now, I'm not surprised by either of these two heavyweights winning awards. And the third one was Sarah J. Maas, and she came in third, and she has won it 7 times. So yeah, all excellent authors. You can see why they won. Now, the whole thing started in 2009, so it's been going on for quite a while, much longer than I realized. So what are the 15 categories that they had for 2024? So they had fiction. Literally means a fiction work of literature, and they really didn't specify a genre. So it was open to all genres. Historical fiction, a genre that combines historical events with fictional characters and fictional plots. Cool. Mystery and thriller. This really irritated me because these are very two distinctive genres and I felt that they should have been separated. But they kind of went with a mystery with suspense, tension, and excitement. So they were looking for a book that kind of encompassed both, I guess. I don't agree with that. I really wish it had been two separate categories. But I digress. So next was romance. That focuses on the romantic love between two people. Romantasy. This focuses on blending fantasy and romance, where the romance is the plot driver. Okay. Fantasy. It's a book set in an imaginary universe and or with mystical creatures. Science fiction. Now, this one was to cover books that have imaginary and futuristic concepts in them. Yes. Horror. So this literature literally likes to scare, shock, and disturb the audience. And usually it has some kind of supernatural elements, but not always. Not always. So the next category was debut novel. This is literally the first book released by the author. And again, it didn't specify genre. So it was open to all books in all genres. There was an audiobook category. And this was just whichever book was best as an audiobook. Young adult fantasy. This category of fiction was aimed at ages 12 to 18, so kids that age, in the fantasy genre. So they literally, you couldn't take any of the other genres into consideration in this one. But that's why they had a young adult fiction section, which is aimed at 12 to 18-year-olds again, but does allow all the genres. I know. I think fantasy must have been the driving force behind reading over the last few years, and that's why it got so many categories. Then we had the nonfiction, which is writing based on facts and real events. Memoir, which is a nonfiction narrative about a specific period in the author's life, which is often a celebrity and is based on their experiences. And then we have history and biography. Biography is a non-fiction account of a person's life written by somebody else. So very different from memoir. And history is the non-fiction study of the past. So I read all these genres and I voted in every single category. Some of the books I chose won, so yay me. And some I picked didn't even make it through round one. So I am very eclectic in what I like. I don't tend to follow trends, which, that's pretty much my whole life. So let's take a look at the fiction category first. Now, the winner in this section was The Wedding People by Alison Isbach. I voted for this book. I gave this book 5 stars. Now, this book was a huge surprise for me because it really, truly was not what I was expecting. I've gotten to the point in my reading career where I don't read the synopsis of books. And I know that sounds really strange, but I do it because sometimes the synopsis puts me off reading the book. Like, it's not well written, or it doesn't make sense, or it just doesn't sound appealing. And I don't need that in my life. So I literally take the book at the title value and what the cover looks like. And what I was expecting from this book was it to be like maybe a little bit comedy, romance, fluffy marriage, or maybe something goes a little awry with the wedding plans, bride and groom have a fight. I don't know. But this book was nothing like that. Now, Phoebe arrives at the Grand Cornwall to find that the rest of the hotel is full of wedding guests. And she shouldn't have been able to book a room because she wasn't there for the wedding, but somehow she manages it. But she was coming there to do something else. Like, she's there to spoil herself because, end of. The bride takes her under her wing, and we find that Phoebe, who felt her life was over, gets a reprieve, and it comes from the bridezilla, who really has a heart of gold. This book was a dark comedy, but it was so well written. I was hooked. It was my pick. I'm so glad it won. It was so awesome. It only just didn't make it into my top 5 reads of last year, only just. Now, some other books that are notable mentions for being nominated was Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Really great book. Really great book. Blue Sisters by Coco Melrose. I really enjoyed it. Like, I really enjoyed that one. I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue completely blew my mind. This book did. It was a wonderful book. But The Wedding People won by a huge landslide. And it was well deserved. Seriously, if you haven't read it yet, you really should add it to your pile and read it. It was fantastic. Okay, so let's take a look at historical fiction next. Now, the winner in this category was The Women by Kristen Hanna. And this really wasn't a surprise for me. Like, it slayed. It got 253,000 votes. Me, I picked The Love Elixir by Augusta Cohen-Logan because I thought it was a better book, but she only got 3,200 votes. But it's not surprising because she really is an unknown author, and Kristen Hanna has a cult following. I love her too. I love her books. I thought the book was truly wonderful, and I don't disagree that she deserved to win, but personally my heart was just somewhere else. It belonged to another book. But The Women was about a nursing student. Her name is Frankie. Her brother is shipped out to Vietnam, so she joins the Army Nurse Corps. There is so much death and destruction, and the men are not trained for this. Like, they're as green as they come. But the real horrors are on their own soil with a divided America, angry protesters, and a country who really wants to forget all about Vietnam. It was heartbreaking. So much horror and sadness. Like, it definitely had some really beautiful moments with the friendships in it, but it was a really long book. Oh, and I think that might have been the driving factor why I didn't want to vote for it, because I really felt like it could have been scaled back quite a large amount, like probably 100 pages. It felt very filled in. Notable mentions of nominees: The Book Lovers Library by Madeline Martin. Oh my God, this book was phenomenal. Phenomenal. The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhorn. Brilliant book. Brilliant book. And The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. I absolutely blew through that one, but I'm a big Kate Quinn fan. So there were a lot of really solid books in that category. Like, I would have had, like, if I was another person, I probably would have had a lot of trouble picking. So the next category is the mystery and thriller. Now, I personally chose The House of Glass by Sarah Pekanin. And I feel she should have won because she truly wrote an astronomically good book. But she didn't even make it through the first round of voting, which was massively disappointing. Now, I've read the most books in this category, and funnily enough, I actually hadn't read the winner. And the winner was God of the Woods by Liz Moore. All right. So what is this book about, this winning book? So it's August 1975, and a teenager has vanished from her camp. She is the daughter of the owners of the camp, and this is not the first time a child has gone missing. Woo! As the search begins, a thrilling drama unfolds, and the family's dark secrets are all coming to the surface. This book totally intrigued me just from the little synopsis that I read, and I actually have added it to my TBR for this year. It got 4.18 stars on Goodreads, and it sounds really promising. So I can't really say whether or not it deserved the nomination, but the fact that I added it to my TBR with so many other books out there should tell you everything you need to know that I think it's probably going to be worth it. Notable mentions in this category: First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This one is a Reese Witherspoon book pick. I really enjoyed it. Frida McFadden had 2 nominations in this category. She got The Boyfriend and The Teacher, and I enjoyed both of them. Like, really good books. Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. Now, I got an art copy of this one, and it was a standout book for me. Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. He's always a winner for me, so I'm not surprised that he was nominated. I think he might be nominated every time he releases a book, but don't quote me on it because I actually don't know. The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. Phenomenal series. I love her. I love her. And then another couple of books, Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth and The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins, were both amazing books. Like, I literally took the rest of the nominees that I hadn't read and added it to my TBR to 2025, because if these were the caliber of the books that other people were picking for 2024, these have to be somewhat decent. Like, yeah. So yeah, my TBR is already out of control and it's only January. So romance is the next category. Do not get me wrong, okay? I love Emily Henry, but her book Funny Story, I didn't feel like was her best work. And it surprised the heck out of me that it won, but people loved it. It got 4.23 stars. So, okay. What's it about? Daphne always loved the way her fiance, Peter, told their story, how they met on a blustery day, fell in love, and moved back to his lakeside hometown to begin their life together. He was really good at telling it, right up until the moment he realized he was actually in love with his childhood best friend, Petra. Oh, God, that really sucks. Which is how Daphne begins her new story, stranded in the beautiful Wanning Bay, Michigan, without friends or family, but with a dream job as a children's librarian that barely pays the bills, and proposing to be roommates with the only person who could possibly understand her predicament, Petra's ex, Miles Noack. Yeah, you can kind of see where this is going, right? Scruffy and chaotic, with a penchant for taking solace in the sound of heartbreaking love ballads. Okay, I like doing that too. Miles is the exact opposite of practical, buttoned up Daphne, whose co-workers know so little about her that they have a running bet going whether she is FBI or if she's in witness protection. The roommates mainly avoid one another until one day, while drowning their sorrows, they form a tenuous friendship and a plan. If said plan also involves posting deliberately misleading photos of their summer adventures together, come on, who could blame them? Who could blame them? But it's all just for show, of course, because there's no way Daphne would actually start her new chapter by falling in love with her ex-fiance's new fiance's ex. Right? Mouthful. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a solid book. I enjoyed it. I just think that there were better choices in this category. I really do. For example, Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez was far better in my opinion. It really was. And it had a better star rating. But, you know, the voters voted. People have spoken. What do you do? What do you do? Complain? You can't complain. Maybe you can complain. I'm joking. Me personally, I actually picked The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. Okay, this book was hilarious. I think that was one of the reasons why it's underrated, because it's not really overly lovey-dovey like Funny People was, but it was by far the best book in my humblest of opinions. Like, the writing was loads better. So Ali Hazelwood actually had 2 nominees in this category. Bride, which I did enjoy, and Not in Love, which I kind of hated with the passion of 1,000 Suns. Yeah. Leather and Lock by Bryn Weaver came 4th. This one was a little smutty, so I get why it didn't win, but it was still a stellar book. Yeah, I actually think there was a lot of better romance books that weren't nominated. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Okay, up next is Romantasy. Now, I am in my Romantasy era right now. And Sarah J. Maas, she completely slayed in this category, okay? House of Flame and Shadow, which is book 3 in her Crescent City series. Okay, I actually haven't read this series yet. One of the reasons is it's not finished, and I try not to do that. And I'm already working my way through her Throne of Glass series right now, and I try and only commit to one series at a time because I'm a nightmare. But I really was not surprised that she won. Like, based on the caliber of her other books, I can see why she won. I didn't vote for her, obviously, because I haven't read it, but I would have voted for it. I really do think I would have had I have read it, and it totally deserved the win. Like, from my understanding of the book series, it is top notch. So pretty much every book in this category is on my wish list. But I actually hadn't read super many here. Like I said, I only just got into my era. But I did choose The Spell Shot by Sarah Beth Durst. It did really well, but come on, it was batting in the big leagues with some of the top authors in the genre. Like, come on, it was unlikely to win. The second place went to The Apprentice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. It's book 2 of the series. I really loved the first book. The second book was great too. Then we had Quicksilver by Callie Hart, and this one was excellent. So there was some really stiff competition in the Romantasy battle. So the other books are Phantasma. I have coming up on my TBR. I've had it downloaded on Kindle Unlimited for a while, but I'm a little behind with my ARCs. And the Zodiac Academy. Had no idea how brilliant this series was until last year, but I am digging the crap out of it. Okay, so let's slide into fantasy next. Again, this one was so hard for me because at the point that the voting had closed, I hadn't read Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune yet. But I knew it would be a serious contender. It won anyway. Like, it didn't need my vote. And it was totally well deserved because I have read the book now and I loved it. I loved it so much. But believe it or not, it only just won. Like, The Familiar was hot on its heels, and that one was written by Leah Bardugo, and it would have deserved it too. Another excellent book. But what's Somewhere Beyond the Sea about? Arthur Parnassus lives a good life built on the ashes of a bad one. He is the master of a strange orphanage on a distant and peculiar island, and he hopes soon to be the adoptive father to 6 dangerous and magical children who live there. I don't think they're dangerous. I think they're adorable. Arthur works hard and loves with his whole heart, so none of the children ever feel the neglect or the pain that he once felt as an orphan on that very same island all those years ago. But he's not alone. Joining him is the love of his life, Linus Baker, a former caseworker in the department in charge of magical youth. And there's the island sprite, Zoe Chapelwhite, and her girlfriend, Maya Helen Webb. Together, they will do anything to protect those children, and they truly do. Heartwarming, heartwarming. But when Arthur is summoned to make a public statement about all the things that he went through in his dark past, he finds himself at the helm of a fight for the future that his family and all the magical people in the world deserve. It was such a good book. Such a good book. And I love the character they brought in, David. He hopes to find a home on the island with them, and he's okay with calling himself a monster. And it's a name that Arthur worked so hard to protect the children from, like his children from. Now, Arthur knows that they're at a breaking point. Their family will either grow stronger or they will fall apart. It's just part of it. And it was a 5-star book for me. 5 stars. But I also gave The Familiar 5 stars. So other books in the category that I've read and I really enjoyed was Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands. It was amazing. It was so good. Also part of a series, and you really should read them in order because otherwise they don't make a lot of sense. Another book was The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. That book was phenomenal. Like, seriously. But I didn't pick any of those books. What book did I pick? I picked the latest installment in the All Souls series. You probably know it by A Discovery of Witches. The installment is called The Blackbird Oracle by Deborah Harkness. Now, I knew she wouldn't win. We are die-hard fans, but we are not a large group. But if you love witches, vampires, and some historical elements, this series is amazing. Seriously, truly amazing. Now, fantasy is one of my favorite genres. So really, any book that was nominated could have won and I would have accepted it. Well, all except the book from the In Blood and Ash series, because I tried it and I didn't enjoy it. Like, I don't get the hype. Other people obviously do. So what's next? Sci-fi. I didn't have much skin in this game, but The Ministry of Time by Callie Ann Bradley crushed this category. I'm still waiting on my library hold for this book. I requested it months ago, and it's still months to go before I can get it. But I'm sure it'll be totally worth the wait. Like, the amount of votes it got is obviously going to be worth the wait. But what's this book about? In the near future, a civil servant is offered the salary of her dreams and is, shortly afterward, told the project she will be working on. A recently established government ministry is gathering expats from across history to establish whether time travel is feasible for the body, but also for the fabric of space-time. She is tasked with working as a bridge, living with, assisting, and monitoring the expat known as 1847, or Commander Graham Gore. As far as history is concerned, Commander Gore died on Franklin's doomed 1845 expedition to the Arctic. So he's a little disorientated. He's living with an unmarried woman who regularly shows her calves, surrounded by outlandish concepts such as washing machines, Spotify, and the collapse of the British Empire. But with an appetite for discovery and the support of a charming and chaotic cast of fellow expats, he adjusts quickly. So over the next year, what the bridge originally thought would be, at best, a horrifically uncomfortable roommate dynamic, well, it evolves into something much deeper. By the time the true shape of the ministry's project comes to the light, the bridge has fallen haphazardly, fervently in love, with consequences she never could have imagined. Now forced to confront the choices that brought them together, the bridge must finally recognize with how and whether she believes what she does next can actually change the future. You can see why I'm ready for this book. This book has it all. I am dying to get my hands on it. And I really, truly believe that even though I haven't read it, it totally deserved to win. I thought The Family Experiment by John Mars would win, but it got spanked. And I don't just mean a little spanked, I mean spanked. But for Poops and Shoots, I added all the nominees that I hadn't read yet to my TBR pile. I've done it through the library because, seriously, I'm going to go broke otherwise. Broke. Okay, it's horror next, and I love horror. Stephen King was the author that hooked me into my reading mania 30 years ago. Now I'm aging myself, and I knew he would win. You Like It Darker got the most votes. Now, I haven't read it. I don't read short stories, and this is a collection of short stories. So this is not something I was interested in. I may read it at some point, but I don't have any plans to right now. You Like It Darker? Fine, so do I, writes Stephen King in the afterword to his magnificent new collection of 12 stories that delve into the darker part of life, both metaphorical and literal. King has, for half a century, been a master of the form, and these stories about fate, morality, luck, and the folds in which reality where anything can happen are as rich and riveting as his novels. Both weighty in theme and a huge pleasure to read, King writes to feel the exhilaration of leaving ordinary day-to-day behind, and in You Like It Darker readers will find that exhilaration too, again and again. Now, I did see that he'd done like a the next book from Cujo, so maybe I will get it. Like, he did a sequel to Cujo in there. Okay, anyway, I felt there were some really epic books in this category. Like We Used to Live Here by Marcus Clyware. Brilliant book. I was hooked from start to finish on that one. What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. Now, that one was a novella from the Swan Soldier series, but that series is bone-chilling. Another book I really enjoyed was Murder Road by Simone St. James. Epic author. Love her. Amazing book. Okay, Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. That book was a well-written masterpiece. I didn't pick any of those. I picked Sleep Tight by J.H. Marquette because I'm quite fond of his books, and this one deserved my vote. Moving away from horror, I always love debut novels. One of my favorite things to do is to hunt down brand new authors and read their very first dip into author world. The book that won was How to End a Love Story by Yuling Kwong, And you know what? It was awesome. I actually didn't read it until after voting had closed, but honestly, it was a well-deserved win. It was a romance book. I enjoyed it a ton. So what is that about? Helen Zhang hadn't seen Grant Shepherd once in the 13 years since the tragic accident that bound their lives together forever. Now she's a best-selling author. Helen pours everything into her career. She's even scored a coveted spot in the writer's room of the TV adaptation of her popular young adult novels. Now, if she can get past her imposter syndrome and overcome the writer's block that's plaguing her, surely the rest of her life will fall into place too. LA is the fresh start she needs. After all, no one knows her there. Except Grant has done everything in his power to move on from the past, including building a life across the country. And while the panic attacks have never quite gone away, he's well liked around town as a screenwriter. You see where this is going, right? He knows he shouldn't have taken the job on Helen's show, but it will open doors to developing his own projects. He just can't pass up the opportunity. Can't. Honestly, I probably wouldn't either. Grant's exactly as Helen remembers him. He's charming. He's funny. He's popular. And totally lovable in the ways that she's never been. And Helen is exactly as Grant remembers too. Brilliant. Beautiful. But closed off. But working together is messy and electrifying. And Helen's parents, who have never forgiven Grant, have no idea he's back in the picture at all. When secrets come to light, they must reckon with the fact that theirs was never meant to be any kind of love story. And yet, the key to making peace with their past and themselves might just lie in holding on to each other in the present. There were a lot of books in other categories that were here as well. So it really was a solid year for new authors. We Used to Live Here and The Book of Doors were both nominated in this category and their own categories. I really had a hard time choosing between the two, but I did pick We Used to Live Here for this category because honestly, it really stood apart for an author, for it to be their first novel. It was excellent. But they were all really great first books. Like, I can't complain at all. And I seriously cannot wait to see what all these other authors do next. All right, so next was audiobooks. And Funny People won again. Like, I don't agree with this. Listen for the Lie should have won. And it only placed fourth. I'm not going to repeat all the books because most of the books that came up already have already been talked about here. So we're just going to move on. Like audiobooks. Next is young adult fantasy. This was another difficult choice for me because there were some really epic books nominated. Really epic books. So the winner was Ruthless Vow by Rebecca Ross. This book is part of a duology, and Divine Rivals blew my mind. And don't get me wrong, Ruthless Vow was great too, but I didn't vote for it because the book I did pick, I think, deserved to win more. But you know what? I stand by this. I think it did a great job and it totally deserved the win. So 2 weeks have passed since Iris returned home bruised and heartbroken from the front. But the war is far from over. Roman is missing, and the city of Oath continues to dwell in a state of disbelief and ignorance. When Iris and Atty are given another chance to report on Dacre's movements, they both take the opportunity and head westward once more, despite the danger. Knowing it's only a matter of time before the conflict reaches a city that's unprepared and fracturing beneath the Chancellor's reign. Since waking below in Dacre's realm, Roman cannot remember his past, but given the reassurance that his memories will return in time, Roman begins to write articles for Dacre, uncertain of his place in the greater scheme of the war. When a strange letter arrives by the wardrobe door, like it slides underneath, Roman is first suspicious, then intrigued. As he strikes up a correspondence with his mystery pen pal, Roman will soon have to make a decision. He's either to stand with Dacre or betray the god who healed him. And as the days grow darker, inevitably drawing Roman and Iris closer together, the two of them will risk their very hearts and futures to change the tides of the war. I feel like it did deserve to win. Don't get me wrong. Like, I can see why people picked it. But if you hadn't read the first book, like, it's a hard distinction to know whether or not the book was good for those people. But other nominees included The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. Brilliant book. Wisteria by Adeline Grace. Now, this one was my choice. It's an epic book. Amazing series. So we're getting close to the end now, but we have young adult fiction next. Heartstoppers Volume 5 won it. And this series is written by Alice Osman. I've never read any of these books. I never wanted to. It's really popular, so I really wasn't surprised it won. Now, it's about Nick and Charlie, and they are very much in love. They finally said those 3 little words, and Charlie has almost persuaded his mum to let him sleep over at Nick's house. But Nick, who's going off to university next year, they wonder if things are going to change. You know what? I'm really not interested in even reading the series, so I won't be picking it up. I'm sure if you want to read it that you won't be disappointed, but this book really, I don't know. Nothing about this series has like tickled my fancy at all. And I was also really surprised because Holly Jackson's book, The Reappearance of Rachel Price, came in second. And I actually thought that book was really slow. Like, I almost didn't finish it twice. The book I did pick was 1,000 Broken Pieces by Tilly Cole. Oh my God. Tilly Cole, you broke me. This book broke me. Like, she has a way of bringing the 1-2 punch to your emotions, and you will be emotionally drained by the end. Like, my heart hurt so bad. So bad. So I'm actually really surprised it didn't win, especially as 1,000 Boy Kisses, the first book, like the one before that, did really well. So I'm actually kind of surprised it didn't win. Okay, so we're moving into the nonfiction territory now, and I'm just kind of going to give you the cliff notes. The winner was Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. It was all right. It's all about mental health, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't tickle me the way other books had. I chose The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. God, I hope I said that right. None of the nonfiction choices were standouts, but I did enjoy that one. So up next is the memoirs. And the winner was The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. It was my pick. I was so glad it won. But The Sociopath by Patrick Gagne was also a top contender. Not many of the rest tickled my fancy, even though I had read 3 of the other picks. Last, and definitely my least favorite category, history and biography. The Bookshop by Evan Friss won. I haven't read it, wasn't even on my radar. I picked American Scary because, hello, it's about horror. And the only other book that I'd actually read was The Women in the Valley of the Kings. But what I did do was I picked 4 books from the category and added it to my TBR because I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone. I'm trying to expand my reading more. I'm trying to build back a better Stacey. But what did you think of the winners? Did you vote? Do you think a book should have been nominated and it wasn't? I know there were plenty that I think should have. Ooh, so I don't normally do this, but one of my favorite books of all times is called A Man Called Uwe, and it's by Frederick Brockman. Have you read this book? Because if you haven't, you should. So my husband wanted to watch a movie, and we were flicking through Netflix, and he came across the one with Tom Hanks, but they called it A Man Called Otto. And I warned him. I was like, dude, this book is going to make you laugh and cry in equal measures. And I wasn't sure I wanted to watch the Americanized version of one of my favorite books, but honestly, it is totally worth the watch if you haven't seen it yet. We were both crying at the end, and there were some seriously funny parts all the way through the movie. Grab your tissues and grab your popcorn. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a hit on that subscribe button. You know the place, youtube.com/at the right kind of book talk. You can follow me on TikTok at right.kind.book.talk. You can also find me on Instagram at the right kind of book talk. I also have a Facebook page. It's at right kind book talk. You always have the option to email me at the right kind of book talk at gmail.com. You can give me feedback or topics that you'd like to see covered. And as always, you could request to come on the show. We could have a chat, talk books, maybe your favorite book. Maybe you can convince me to read a book. You can find the right kind of book talk on Spotify, Apple Music, RSS, Apple Podcast, Player FM, Amazon, and pretty much anywhere else you can find a podcast. If you give me a follow on any of these, you will be in with a chance to win bookish prizes. If you send a friend to my YouTube and you've subscribed and they have subscribed, you will double your chances of winning. Come on, book stuff. Have the reading day you deserve, and I will see you next week. This is Stacey Wright signing off from The Right Kind of Book Talk. Take care, readers.